Welcome to On Mac Development, conversations and tutorials on today's latest technology in Mac software, applications, programming, and development. You can access related resources, recommended reading, special offers, and more when you visit the On Mac Development Resource Center at informit.com/MacDEV Center.
Well, what do you like best about developing for the iPhones?
Actually, the language for me. I've got a very diverse language background. I've been coding since Assembler, Basic, Pascal, C, all the way up. And Objective-C is so far the most elegant language I've found. A lot of people have a problem with it, but once you grok it, as some of us old-timers call it, you fall in love with it. And it's beyond just, okay, this is a nice language like, say, Java or C# would be, but you actually really get emotionally involved with the language, and you just fall in love with working with the language. And it becomes just elegance. You know the code's right when it looks beautiful to you. So you really get to that point with it, and that's the part I enjoy the most.
Elegant meaning, and compared to what? Like, how, if someone isn't getting what that means exactly, what might you?
Well, it's kind of hard to describe, but when you feel like you're swimming upstream and you're having to hack a lot of things, and you're having to be a lot of awkward code in there and a lot of conditions that you feel are really bizarre, that's inelegant code. It's very ugly code, and you look at it and you're like, okay, this is all blocky and it's all over the place, and you know you're doing it wrong. Where once you start getting the Objective-C way and you start doing things right, the code is very short. It's very, very few lines of code. There's not a lot of hacking going along. It's just, it looks very elegant. And you just look at it and you're like, wow, I did that in 8 lines of code. In Java, it probably would have taken me 30 lines of code to do that. So it allows you to do things a lot cleaner.
Okay. This probably has something to do with that, but with the option to develop for WebOS or BlackBerry, what makes you concentrate on the iPhone?
Well, a few things. First, I like Apple's designs. Apple, they really are a quality of design over quantity. So there's a certain, again, the word elegance coming to their hardware. You know, even if I had to use Windows, I'd still probably be running it on a MacBook because it's a beautiful machine. The same thing with the iPhone. The iPhone is a beautiful machine. It's a very solid feeling in your hand, where you pick up some of the other devices and you're like, okay, I might break this if I grab it too hard. And the other side of it, again, is the language. The BlackBerries and the others are using Java. Java really is not a language I would prefer to use on a small device like that. You know, I would want something closer to the metal, as they call it. It's more of a C base where I can control the memory, I can control every aspect of the language, where Java you don't get that, and a lot of that control is abstracted away from you. So that's the design, the hardware design I really enjoy, and the fact that the language gives me a lot of control over the inner workings of it is why I prefer to focus on that.
Okay. So I'm assuming you're planning to stick with just developing for the iPhone then?
Absolutely.
Okay. Moving on, and this sort of goes to the Objective-C, why did you initially learn it?
Went to the hardware. I used to code Java for the servers, and didn't like the hardware from the other vendors, and saw the Titanium PowerBook way back when and said, that's a beautiful machine. And it runs Unix even better. And I got on the platform, and then I was like, okay, I want to be able to code for this platform because this is such beautiful hardware. Let's see what the languages look like. So it started out as kind of a hobby. Ended up writing a piece of software for my wife to use for a photography business, and this language is just great. I mean, the attention to detail that they have in the hardware also translates over to the language that they use in the APIs, and it was like, this is just a much more elegant path. And then the frustrations with corporate bureaucracy, I was like, okay, I'm done with corporate. I'm done with it. I'm tired of living in a cubicle. And then the iPhone came out. It's like, please let us code for this. And the SDKs came out. It's like, okay, I'm done. This is where I'm headed now. So.
Well, a lot of people I think are having that thought. But so I think I know the answer to this question. But would you recommend Cocoa and Objective-C to someone thinking about learning to program?
I would, but it's a steep learning curve.
Okay.
It's not a trivial language to learn. It's not HTML. It's not some of the newer languages that are coming out, PHP, Python. It's a hard language to learn. There's a lot there because it is a very dynamic language. With that dynamics comes a lot of complexity that you have to know. So diving into it, I think you could learn it as a first language, but it would be rough. But it would be time well spent.
Okay, out there in Mac user forums or different things like that, I mean, I see people asking this question, should I learn this or should I learn that? And what should someone ask themselves to determine, is it worth that steep learning curve?
Whether they really have a passion for solving problems. Good friend of mine, Mike Lee, put it best. He says, imagine yourself solving an incredibly complex problem, and when you get done with that problem, and you've been banging your head on the wall for 8 hours, and then you get the rush of the solution. If that rush of the solution is worth that 8 hours of pain, then yes, learn the language. If you at that time and you say, that just was not worth it, that was just a complete waste of my day, then no, this is probably not the right path for you. And I think that's the best way to sum it up. Is that joy of solution worth the pain to you? Then I would say yes,
because
go down that path.
That pain is guaranteed.
That pain is guaranteed.
Okay.
That's part of the programmer's life. We're incredibly twisted, broken people because we sit in a dark room for 8 to 10 hours at a time, banging our heads against incredibly complex problems, and finally solve it, and then immediately move on to the next incredibly hard, complex problem. So,
but that pain is greater with this particular language
than some of the others. Yes, it's in the beginning when you first started getting it up, because it is dynamic and therefore complex, and you have you'll struggle with that. But once you get past it, then it's great.
Okay, we're getting close to the end of this, and I haven't even covered all of my questions, but I'm curious, what would you have people know? What's something I didn't ask? Like, for example, what would you impart to a new developer? Here you are with all this experience. What would you counsel someone?
A few things. First, the language is not everything about programming. And especially if you want to get into this field, the Mac community is a fantastic family. My advice, and I give this out to them freely, is go to the conferences. There's C4, there's the Voices That Matter, there's a lot of different third-party conferences around the Mac community. Get to know the other developers, and that will make your life infinitely easier. Just as an example, I've got friends of mine now that are in California, some of them that work for Apple now, and when I run into a problem with the language, I just reach out to the community, and the community will solve the problem or teach me how to solve the problem. And I think the community is probably 60% of the benefit of being here, is because the language is great, but when you can't solve it with the language, the community will help you solve it. And that's, you're not going to know that unless you get out there and meet them and get to know them, and go to the conferences.
Well, that's all the time we have, even though I'd like to continue. But Marcus, thank you so much for coming and speaking with us.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thanks for podcasting with us. Remember to visit the On Mac Dev Resource Center, where you can access recommended reading, special offers, and more at informit.com/MacDevCenter. Be sure you subscribe to this channel so you don't miss a single episode. Brought to you by Inform IT, the trusted technology learning source.